We have team coverage of the closing argument so far. We have just gotten word that they just broke for lunch. We start with our Lindsay Gardner live at the Duval County Courthouse. And Lindsay, you and I both have been watching the last hour and a half, and the state wanted to make sure the jury understands how they can convict. They want to make sure that they understand their options.
Yes, Don, that's exactly what the state has been doing and laying out their case. And I was just been watching on our live stream. They just wrapped up their closing arguments within the last 90 seconds or so. Let me go ahead and set the scene for you outside here at the Duval County Courthouse. We have protesters with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. They have been making their way around the courthouse here this morning. We've had a lot more activity today than we've seen in all the other days involved in this trial. Also, notably, over my shoulder, you can see a huge American flag now hanging right on the front steps there of the Duval County Courthouse. All of this as the nation's eyes are focused here on Jacksonville with the culmination of the Michael Dunn murder trial. Again, as you and I just mentioned there, the state gave their closing arguments here this morning for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Now they are on a lunch break, and we will get ready for the defense's turn to give their closing arguments. Let's give you a run back through of the state's argument. Again, remember, the state is clearly going for premeditated first-degree murder. They made that very clear this morning. Here is the outline of that case. They said Dunn was angry. They said his blood was boiling. This is what gets to premeditation here. They believe he was angry when he heard the loud music. The next argument, Dunn initiated the confrontation. He asked them to turn down the music. He is the one that rolled his window back down when they turned the music back up. They say Dunn escalated this. Dunn is the one that fired the shots. Again, remember, 10 bullets were fired, 9 of them hitting the vehicle, 3 of them striking Jordan Davis and killing him. Their argument there, he made that decision 10 different times to fire. They say Michael Dunn is the one who fled, not only fled the scene, he then fled Jacksonville and made it all the way to Brevard County. Then they also say Dunn lied. Dunn lied to his fiancee when the shooting happened. Dunn lied to police the next day. And they say Michael Dunn lied in court on the stand to the jury yesterday. That is the outline of the state's argument. I want to bring in now our Deanna Betnesh. She was also taking a closer listen to the closing arguments with all of us here this morning. And Deanna, you're going to give us a closer look at what the state's case is.
Well, we know that this really all began, the closing arguments, just after 10:30 this morning. And the state was really trying to prove to the jury that Dunn shot to kill. The assistant state attorney, Aaron Wolfson, says Dunn was upset that Jordan Davis, a 17-year-old, didn't listen to him. Wolfson describes the shooting as target practice for Dunn. She says he wasn't shooting to scare the teens in the SUV. He was shooting to kill.
His intention was for Jordan Davis. He even told you that next 3 set of shots to hit Tevin's door, those were for Jordan Davis. That is premeditation.
During Dunn's testimony Thursday, he argued that he was trying to de-escalate the situation. Wolfson says Dunn is the one who escaped, but he did it by pulling out a gun and opening fire.
I'm not quite sure how you de-escalate a situation when you're the one who rolls down the window, rolls it back up, and then rolls it down again to keep having a confrontation with the car next to you. I don't consider that de-escalation.
Now, we know that Wolfson argued that Dunn's actions after the shooting were not in line with the claim of self-defense. She said that he would not have gone back to that hotel and not called the police.
And again, this is up to the jury to decide, was this self-defense, was this premeditated first-degree murder, or was this second-degree murder, or the other lesser charges they have to consider here. Deanna, thank you there for that more in-depth look at the arguments here. I also want to give you, again, a look at the protesters we have seen gathered here outside of the courthouse. Of course, this case has really sparked a nerve amongst people here in Jacksonville and folks all across the country. Members of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference has marched in protest around the courthouse here today. We've been watching them for the last hour and a half or so. They came out despite the cold, carrying signs and calling for justice for Jordan Davis.
We believe that Jordan Davis should receive some modicum of justice here today. That justice will mean that Michael Dunn is sent to prison for a very long time for killing an innocent young man.
And I have counted about 15 protesters. I should say it's been very peaceful. They've just been chanting no justice, no peace, carrying signs, even carrying signs referring to Trayvon Martin there. So again, it is a case that is striking a chord with people on multiple levels across our state, across our city, and across the country. I want to bring in our legal expert, former FBI agent and attorney here, Dale Carson, who's been with us for the entire duration of this trial. Dale, I've been sitting here watching the closing arguments with you by the Assistant State Attorney Erin Wolfson, and we should tell everyone at home, this is her first murder case. What was your impression of the argument she gave to the jury?
You know, it was well done. Seems inspired at points, but clearly they've had a long time to contemplate what they're going to do. They've presented all of the points to defeat in advance Dunn's claim of self-defense, and particular emphasis on the fact that he probably lied to his girlfriend by not telling her what actually transpired at the shooting. Remember, she testified in rebuttal that he never told her that there was a gun involved in the events. And Erin Wolfson made good argument about that, particularly.
And let's remember here, the state has the heavier burden here rather than the defense. They have to prove to the jury that Michael Dunn is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you feel like they have done that?
I do, based on what we've seen so far, and that's a really critical point. The government has the obligation to convince a jury beyond every reasonable doubt. All the defense has to do is put some reasonable doubt into the formula.
Even just one.
Just a little reasonable doubt, and then the jury is obligated to return a verdict of not guilty. But I think during the course of the trial, we have seen Mr. Dunn come off as not as authentic or candid with the jury panel, telling the truth as he perhaps needed to. Now, he has laid out the grounds for a self-defense claim. He says he was threatened, he thought he was going to die, he reacted reasonably under the circumstance, but that term reasonable is something that has to be determined by the jury panel.
Now, what does the defense need to do with their closing argument here this afternoon, or is there anything they can do?
What they need to do is really focus on the fact that the sheriff's office, in their view, didn't do a proper crime scene analysis. That's what they've got to do. In other words, it permitted the shooters, or the alleged shooters, okay, to move the vehicle, to discard a weapon, and then return without that area being thoroughly examined. Now, keep in mind that the sheriff's office had no idea that there was another weapon involved, because Mr. Dunn didn't call law enforcement and say, listen, I was attacked, those people had guns, please help me. And none of that happened, so they weren't aware, and now that a weapon hasn't been found, they could reasonably argue that, well, my self-defense claim is not valid because you didn't do what you should have done.
And quickly, in your expert opinion, are we going to see a conviction or an acquittal here?
You know, that's a real difficult call. I think the state's done a good job, and it all depends on whether or not Mr. Dunn is deemed credible by the jury panel.
All right, Dale Carson, thank you so much for that expert legal analysis there. Of course, Action News has your team coverage of this trial, gavel to gavel. We will stay out here. Our Leslie Corsi, Catherine Varnum in the courtroom. Deanna and I are out here, and we will see you back here tonight at 5. Dawn?
All right, thanks, Linz. And keep it locked here on CBS 47 Action News for our live gavel-to-gavel coverage of the murder trial of Michael Dunn. Today is day 9 in closing arguments from the defense. That's still ahead. Well, Verdict Watch starts as soon as this case goes to jury, and we'll break in on the air and online the very minute the verdict is in. Again, actionnewsjax.com. In the meantime, our Leslie Corsi is inside the courtroom, live tweeting throughout the day, and you can follow her at Leslie Corsi 47 at Action News Jax. And we're also streaming the trial for you live at actionnewsjax.com. And while you're there, you can check out our extensive coverage on this case. We have a library of stories and trial video along with a document center. And tune in tonight for CBS 47 Action News. Our own Tara Bars is anchoring from the Duval County Courthouse. She'll head up our live team coverage with more expert analysis from Dale Carson and late-breaking information. Well, parents, pull over. We're going to show you the child safety seats that's considered so dangerous. There's now a recall.
I'm tracking a huge winter storm system bringing ice and snow to North Georgia and the Carolinas. Heavy rain for us when that rain arrives and when skies will clear in your first alert forecast.
And why the wait? We'll show you the paper trail on a recently fired local teacher that dates back years and what we found ahead. But first, how Governor Rick Scott delivered a one-liner of his own seconds before his challenger, Charlie Crist, went on late-night television.